So I developed an exercise over the years. I was taught it originally by other people, but not the way I practice it. But they helped me get rid of all these inner demons, all this inner stuff. So a lot of what I do now is very much informed by what I learned from the shamans in the Amazon over 30 years ago. I think at this point I would be able to handle many, many women in my life, but right now I don't need them anymore. I got enough to fill that void with other things. I don't need to fill it externally, that hole in the heart. And that's all I was doing. I was self-medicating. Just like other people drink or smoke or take drugs, my drug of choice was pussy. Lots of it. Lots of it. And eventually that wasn't good enough. I needed threesomes and even foursomes and even more than that. And it doesn't fill the void. And women would look at my face and say, well, why are you so, you seem sad. You seem so lost and lonely. And like, oh, I was just thinking about I was thinking about work, don't worry about it. When in fact I was like dying on the inside. Again, if you're coming from lack, pussy, poverty, that may seem like something you want until you have it. And then it's not what it seems, believe me. It's quite the opposite. So I became more and more lonely. And since I was my entire life was really nothing but a search for self-esteem, or some genuine self-esteem, not external, like, oh, I'm the greatest, I'm this and that, but genuine, like liking myself, loving myself. I couldn't find that. I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find it in women. I was just breaking their hearts, that's it. And I think I didn't really find anything of consequence until I was in like certain places in South America, mostly in the jungle, Putumayo, Colombia and such, where I made contact with Colombian shamans. A long time before, this is about 30 years ago, a long time before it became fashionable, before anyone in the West had even heard of ayahuasca, I did that. Nobody heard of it, I didn't know what it was. I said, that is kind of like acid, only different, LSD, which I'd taken in copious amounts in college, and which taught me a lot, believe it or not, but I'm not recommending it. You have to be very, very solid to be able to handle such substances, very solid. You have to really know yourself, otherwise you can develop paranoid schizophrenia and such. Be very careful. It's not a way for everyone and anyone. It's not a cure-all, and be-all, end-all. It's nothing like that. But where I was in my search, it was a really great thing to come across. I saw how those shamans approached like emotional problems. They look at it as entities, as literal beings that are possessing you. Las brisas negras, they call it, like little dark winds, black winds. I said, look, in your culture, pretty much everybody has those. I said, no, we call it emotional problems. They said, yeah, it's the same thing, but it's really that. I said, well, I said, no, you will find out that that's what that is. So I developed an exercise over the years. I was taught it originally by other people, but not the way I practice it. It's called the complementary opposite exercise. It was developed by an NLP guy. I learned it from somebody like Steve Pete, but I turned it into something very different with very deep shamanic roots. And yes, it feels almost like an exorcism, but we're gonna get to that later. But they helped me get rid of all these inner demons, all this inner stuff. And whether you look at this as pure fiction or a metaphor, doesn't really matter. Once you get rid of this emotional stuff, at least a little bit of it, your life becomes lighter. It's almost like ballast that you're dropping, and then you're floating up, like a diver's belt where you're dropping lead weights, or like a balloon where you're dropping sandbags. You're getting lighter. So a lot of what I do now is very much informed by what I learned from the shamans in the Amazon over 30 years ago. Ayahuasca isn't what you need. That's not going to help you. What's going to help you is understand that these are deep emotional issues that are holding you back, and that those dictate a lot of the stuff we do, whether we realize it or not. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. And then I really thought I was there. I'd already proved myself, and like I went through the Marine kind of basic training, which is a little harsher than, if you watch Full Metal Jacket, you get an idea what that's like. It breaks a lot of people. Not everybody makes it through it. I found it fun. Somebody told me to do 50 push-ups, I did another 50. I kept going, I did 100. I got reprimanded for that. But none of this a man makes, none of it. Not even combat, not even action makes you a man. And I've seen this because I worked with a lot of special forces and people with PTSD, and I've seen them break down. I've seen 300-pound men break down and go into fetal position after coming back from 3 tours in Kandahar or whatever. And that's not weakness, that's actually strength. Owning your emotions is not weakness. If anyone ever tells you big boys don't cry, it's one of the biggest lies ever being perpetrated on men. It's just wrong. Yes, sure, like the Roman army, they needed tough men, psychopathic killers essentially. They're trying to strip you of your emotions to become a functional super soldier. But that's not where it is. And that's not gonna make you a man, it's gonna make you a robot. So I realized that even that wasn't getting me to where I wanted. None of it ever got me even close to where I wanted. Certainly not women, certainly not overcompensating, not being 240 pounds and benching 270. I never was that strong. I only benched 275, 3 sets of 12. I can't even do that right now. But none of it made me feel like a man very briefly, just like a drug. But every time I was alone, I had to have women all the time around me, so I would never have time to think, never have time to feel, never really get in touch with that inner void, that hole in the heart that we all have. That fundamental sadness, that fundamental feeling I'm not okay, I'm not complete, I'm missing something, I just don't know what the hell it is. You can't become a true man until you get that. And it is that journey that probably qualifies me more than anything, and having gotten out of this mess, that qualifies me to tell you or teach you or help you. She had borderline syndrome, which means they find you every weak spot. Because this girl was the one. And I'll tell you one thing, the only way you can lose that inner strength, that composure, is if you don't really have it in the first place.